Over the years, I've realized that when it comes to government communications, and I'm talking all levels of government, there may be former journalists who are involved helping with the messaging, but this isn't journalism. Communications Nova Scotia says on its website they help Nova Scotians understand what their government is doing and why. But realistically, they only release the information they're directed to by the government. Not the parties, but the government. Now, back on the 28th of March, Premier Tim Houston introduced legislation that the news release at the time says will, quote, lead, direct, and support a coordinated response and manage the immediate and ongoing needs of Nova Scotians when a crisis or disaster occurs. And it goes on to say, the Nova Scotia Guard will be a group of volunteers from across the province who will help communities during and after emergencies. The Nova Scotia Guard will include volunteers with specialty skills and members of the public to fill a variety of roles depending on emergency needs. It will harness the many talents of Nova Scotians and their sense of community. It went on to say, that's the Blue Noser way. And I get that, but I also wasn't the only one who wanted to know, how's this really going to work? And who is it that they want to have sign up? And what exactly will they be asked to do? And I did ask to speak with someone about this. In fact, I sent 3 different emails looking for someone to speak to me about this, and one spokesperson from Communications Nova Scotia got back to me to respectfully decline my invitation. And they also sent me a statement, and I respectfully am not going to just read those words to you, those words that were given to me to simply pass along. Doesn't answer my question. And we don't really know the details of this legislation that won't even be passed until the fall. And we don't know exactly who's going to be consulted on this. But I did want to find out more from someone who speaks on behalf of the other 6,000 volunteer firefighters in Nova Scotia. I'm Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud. Hi and welcome. My name is Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud. This is my podcast exclusively presented to you by SaltWire. And I knew right from the moment I saw this headline in the news release that I wanted to talk about this. Natural disaster. Houston asks Nova Scotians to join a new volunteer reaction force. It was written by Andrew Rankin with the Chronicle Herald. And as he wrote back in, March 28th, that the Premier, Tim Houston, is looking for Nova Scotians to step up during natural disasters by signing on with a new emergency volunteer group, the Nova Scotia Guard. And he announced that on Thursday, along with a move to make Emergency Management Office a full government department to be known as the Department of Emergency Management. And I immediately responded to that release and asked for a comment or at least a conversation with someone involved. And I did receive a response, and it said, hi, Sheldon, we are respectfully declining your request for an interview and offering this as a statement in response. And I'm not going to read through the statement because that's not what I do. I have conversations. The statement essentially says that, they're in consultations. The legislation that was introduced in the spring won't be passed until the fall, and they want to meet with the people who provide emergency services in Nova Scotia, including fire services. And of course, that's why I wanted to speak with someone with a lot of knowledge in this front. Greg Jones is the president of the Nova Scotia Fire Association, or Fire Association of Nova Scotia. FSANS, Fire Services Association of Nova Scotia. He's also a 24-year veteran of fire services in Amherst. Has it been 24 years?
Yeah, believe it or not, it's been 24 years, yes.
Well, congratulations on the career thus far and for your advocacy work. And I want to ask, I reached out to you as well right away, and you were enjoying a bit of time of vacation. So thank you for getting back and allowing us to have this conversation. Did you know this was coming?
Yeah, I had no idea this was coming at all. I was kind of intrigued when I heard of the idea when members of the association reached out to me when I was abroad. So I'm kind of interested to see what government's plan is. We've heard very few details. I know consultations coming forward, but I look forward to having a conversation with government to see exactly what it is.
I've been very much trying to be respectful, but yet somewhat critical. I'd rather be not cynical, but a little bit skeptical, because there are a lot of volunteer groups, and my initial gut reaction was, if there's this big cohort of people who want to volunteer, why haven't we been able to tap into them yet? Because you and I and others have talked about the challenges of finding volunteers in this environment. So just to set the table here, what's it like what are you hearing about volunteer services, specifically fire service and recruitment across Nova Scotia right now?
For recruitment for the fire service, right across not only our province, but across the country and globally, there's been a downturn in the last little bit. I can tell you there's been a lot of work done by departments here in our province to boost that up and bring new members in, which is really greatly appreciated. One value we have is that volunteerism. All Nova Scotians try their best to do that. One thing I believe possibly would be happening with this Guard is that bring folks in that would not be related to the fire service as volunteers, but simply people that would come and use a chainsaw or pick things up. But really, I really don't know yet, Sheldon. I'm really waiting to see what will come out. But it's on us as the fire service to continue to boost to get our volunteers. And I see that right across the country. I talked to colleagues in Alberta a few weeks ago, and they're struggling as well for volunteers. We're all trying to find ways to boost our staffing.
When there is a fire and there is some kind of incident or a motor vehicle collision, there's a saying: there are the people who are there who are trained to do a job, and then there's everybody else. And sometimes it's a problem having people around who aren't trained. And I'm not saying that that's the case here, but there has to be a certain level of understanding of what a dangerous situation looks like. And the unanswered questions are, okay, who's insured? What workers' compensation coverage might they have if their employer is going to allow? It was said just recently that the Nova Scotia government sent out a note to all of its employees and said, if you want to sign up, if you go to 211 and sign up, the Nova Scotia government will continue to pay you while you're volunteering and support you in that way. I can't say 100% that happens in every single business in the province right now. If that is the case, maybe this is a signal for the government to let other businesses know that somehow there's some availability or ability for them to support volunteers when they're helping out in that way. Does that make any sense to you?
No, it makes complete sense. When you think of the wildfires we had last year in the spring and early summer, that was a prime example. A lot of workplaces in our province let their employees go to be involved in the wildfire and support that. A lot of employers did a lot of work. Unfortunately, they weren't all recognized. Your employees recognized them for letting them go. But that's one thing that should be looked at as well as part of this Nova Scotia Guard. And I'm kind of intrigued to find out exactly what the meaning is and what it's going to be. That may be part of it, but who knows? And
that's, again, all the moving pieces. And fundamentally, you're asked at times to come sit before legislative committees to give your input, your expertise. And when it comes to issues like protecting volunteers, is that something that, do you suspect at some point you're going to be asked to the table?
It's something that we're ready and prepared to talk about at any given time. We have been asked to have those conversations from time to time. And I do make a point to bring up the aspect of volunteers and what it means in our province. We have a really rich volunteer component here around volunteer firefighting in our province. Not all provinces have that. So it's one of those unique things that we need to make sure continues on, and we find a way to maintain that. And that's one of my goals as well as president, to continue that.
When it comes to that, the training issues, someone else quite plugged in said, what about the Vehicle Insurance Levy Fund? And Fire Services Association of Nova Scotia has been working with that fund to help through the Nova Scotia Fire School to provide training. But something that has never happened before happened this year. That meant that, well, the funds ran out. That there was, is that a problem that you're so successful in getting people to take training that you ran out of money?
Yeah, so the program only has a defined amount of money in it. We only have so much money to put towards that program. The program itself is around training individuals to support motor vehicle incidents on our highways and streets and roads across their province. The important part with that fund is last year we had a tremendous amount of training from all of our service providers that used up all that fund. There's a great use of that fund by all our volunteers across the province. The unfortunate part is we ran out of funds. So the association has done some work the last little bit reviewing that. Also reviewing, we had submitted a request for additional funds from that as well. But one thing I will say is the funds that go into that come from each individual motor vehicle insurance policy in our province that supports that. And it is a finite number that we have to work with. And unfortunately, that's the number we have to work and support the particular training around that.
Yeah, no one wants to pay more, but let's put this in perspective. It's 50 cents per insurance claim or insurance policy. So that's 50 cents per person. Anyone who's insured by a company in Nova Scotia pays 50 cents towards this fund. That's not a lot of money, considering everybody pays about that a month just for the 911 service that's attached to your cell phone.
Now, that's a valid point. Since 2012, we've been managing this fund. And this is the first time we've actually seen a major impact like this towards the fund that put us in a position where we wouldn't have funds to meet all the current need for this year. So it is something that we're looking at. It's something that I've wrote letters and had conversations on. So we'll continue to see where that goes.
And again, 50 cents isn't a lot. $1, well, yeah, that's a 100% jump, but really that's $1. That's $1 per year. You're not talking every month, are you?
No, that's per year.
That's when you renew your insurance, $1 goes to help support or train firefighters. There was something else that came up not long ago, and in response to last year's wildfire season, there was a meeting that happened between the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, and it was an emergency fire fund reserve to bring in people to train them to a standard or to a level for them to be able to help out in the event of another serious wildfire season. Can you talk a little bit about how DNRR approached FSANS about this?
So the funding component, I don't know a whole lot of detail on that. It's actually funding that came from the federal government a few years ago, mandate letter from the Prime Minister, actually. What our conversation we've had with DNRR has been around the firefighter reserve to support them for wildfires. Last year during the major wildfire event, that was something that was very quickly put in place. The purpose at that time was to not only augment DNRR on their scene and get personnel there, but also not to take numerous personnel from one department and leave that area vacant. So this gave the ability to reach out across the province to different municipalities, to different organizations, and pool folks without causing a major impact. That's the conversation that FSANS we've had with DNRR, and we had it last year and again this year as well.
Does it sound like there's a bit of overlap between an emergency firefighter reserve and this Nova Scotia Guard?
To be very honest, Sheldon, I have no idea. So until we have the conversations with the Premier and government and understand that the consultation aspect of exactly what the plan is, I really can't comment on that.
I guess I'm just trying to, find my way through this conversation, which includes, asking for other people to step up. And there are teams, there are people, there are organizations. Red Cross provides support and help. A lot of volunteer groups, search and rescue, as we've heard through the media recently, who are not happy because they've had pretty much funding that's been frozen for more than a decade. So there's a lot of concern there. Can you see why people are a little bit perhaps puzzled by this surprise announcement about a brand new volunteer effort?
I can understand why some folks are puzzled. One thing I will say, though, I will give the benefit currently to government to find out exactly what it is. And then from there, from our organization, we'll weigh our conversation with government on that. But until I know that, it's really hard to know exactly, without concrete details, exactly what it is.
I sense people are worried that another layer of administration means people are being paid to oversee volunteers, and somehow for people who give up hours, weeks, months to dedicate to helping out in their community, to see that it may be complicated or in some ways funded, the money will be taken to give to another layer of administration when there's a real desperate need for not just equipment, but for personnel and for training, that it might not just sit well with people.
Yeah, and as you know yourself, Sheldon, members of the fire service want to do whatever they can at a moment's notice to help. And I look forward to the conversation on exactly what this Nova Scotia Guard is and exactly how to move forward, not only for the fire service, but all the Nova Scotians when we truly need it.
Yeah. And just so we're clear, you have not yet had the invitation extended to you or the organization that you represent?
Just this afternoon, actually, I got an invitation extended to me from the province, and I'm going to respond to that later today and see exactly what's going to happen.
Was that standing committee specific to Nova Scotia Guard, or is this about something else?
No, something else around the consultation aspect of it.
Okay. Well, I certainly hope that, that you and others around the table are able to communicate what it is that I'm hearing from some of the people who do volunteer, which is that, we need some more help. And I think that's the underlying theme here. And to give the Premier credit, yes, it is the Blue Noser way for people to pitch in and do what they can to help their neighbors. But at what scale and how is this going to work? I think we're all interested in finding that out ourselves.
Yeah, me as well. Truly just want to know exactly how it's going to work and what the vision of it is. And then we'll see what the impact will be potentially on the fire service.
And you're just a couple of weeks away from the annual conference, isn't it? Coming up this year in Truro?
Yeah, our annual conference will be coming up April 26th, 27th, and 28th in Truro. It's going to be a great lineup and a great group of individuals that will be there presenting, and folks that will be coming from the fire service to have great conversations and network. So look forward to seeing everybody there as well.
All right, Chief, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Greg Jones is the president of the Fire Services Association of Nova Scotia.